Another day, another story. In one of the darkest moments of America's industrial history, the Triangle Shirtwaist Company factory in New York City burns, killing 146 workers, on March 25, 1911. The tragedy led to the development of a series of laws and regulations that better protected the safety of factory workers. The Triangle factory, owned by Max Planck and Isaac Harris, was located in the top 3 floors of the 10-story Ash building in downtown Manhattan. Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. It was a sweatshop in every sense of the word, a cramped space lined with workstations and packed with poor immigrant workers, mostly teenage women who did not speak English. At the time of the fire, there were 4 elevators with access to the factory floors, but only one was fully operational and it could hold only 12 people at a time. There were 2 stairways down to the street, but one was locked from the outside to prevent theft by the workers and the other opened inward only. The fire escape, as all would come to see, was shoddily constructed, and could not support the weight of more than a few women at a time. Blank and Harris already had a suspicious history of factory fires. The Triangle factory was twice scorched in 1902, while their Diamond Waste Company factory burned twice, in 1907 and in 1910. It seems that Blank and Harris deliberately torched their workplaces before business hours in order to collect on the large fire insurance policies they purchased, a not uncommon practice in the early 20th century. While this was not the cause of the 1911 fire, it contributed to the tragedy, as Blank and Harris refused to install sprinkler systems and take other safety measures in case they needed to burn down their shops again. Added to this delinquency were Blank and Harris' notorious anti-worker policies. Their employees were paid a mere $15 a week, despite working 12 hours a day, every day. When the International Ladies' Garment Workers Union led a strike in 1909 demanding higher pay and shorter and more predictable hours, Blank and Harris Company was one of the few manufacturers who resisted, hiring police as thugs to imprison the striking women, and paying off politicians to look the other way. On March 25, a Saturday afternoon, there were 600 workers at the factory when a fire broke out in a rag bin on the 8th floor. The manager turned the fire hose on it, but the hose was rotted and its valve was rusted shut. Panic ensued as the workers fled to every exit. The elevator broke down after only 4 trips, and women began jumping down the shaft to their deaths. Those who fled down the wrong set of stairs were trapped inside and burned alive. Other women trapped on the 8th floor began jumping out the windows, which created a problem for the firefighters whose hoses were crushed by falling bodies. Also, the firefighters' ladders stretched only as high as the 7th floor, and their safety nets were not strong enough to catch the women, who were jumping 3 at a time. Blank and Harris were on the building's top floor with some workers when the fire broke out. They were able to escape by climbing onto the roof and hopping to an adjoining building. The fire was out within half an hour, but not before over 140 died. The workers' union organized a march on April 5 to protest the conditions that led to the fire. It was attended by 80,000 people. Though Blank and Harris were put on trial for manslaughter, they managed to get off scot-free. Still, the massacre for which they were responsible did finally compel the city to enact reform. In addition to the Sullivan-Hoey fire prevention law passed that October, the New York Democratic Set took up the cause of the worker and became known as a Reform Party. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire was one of the deadliest industrial disasters in U.S. history. On March 25, 1911, a fire broke out on the top floors of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City's Greenwich Village, killing 146 garment workers, mostly young immigrant women from Italy and Eastern Europe. Key facts about the fire cause: a fire started in a scrap bin on the 8th floor, likely due to a cigarette or match. Locked doors: factory owners locked the exit doors, preventing workers from escaping. Fire escapes failed: a flimsy fire escape collapsed under the weight of fleeing workers. Deaths: some workers jumped to their deaths, while others succumbed to smoke and flames. Response: the fire department arrived quickly, but their ladders only reached the 6th floor, too short to rescue those trapped above. Impact of the fire labor reforms. The tragedy led to stronger workplace safety laws, including fire codes and regulations for factory conditions. Workers' rights movement. It fueled the growth of labor unions, particularly the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, ILGWU, advocating for better wages and conditions. Owners acquitted. Factory owners Isaac Harris and Max Blank were tried for manslaughter but acquitted, though they later paid small settlements in civil lawsuits. The Triangle Shirtwaist Fire remains a tragic reminder of the importance of workplace safety and workers' rights. It also helped shape modern labor laws in the U.S. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, a tragic turning point in American labor history. On March 25, 1911, a normal workday at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City turned into a nightmare. Within minutes, a fire erupted on the 8th floor of the Ash Building, trapping hundreds of young immigrant workers inside. By the time the flames were extinguished, 146 people, mostly women, were dead. The fire became one of the deadliest industrial disasters in U.S. history and a catalyst for major labor reforms. The factory and its workers. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was a sweatshop in the Ash Building, located at 23-29 Washington Place in Greenwich Village. It was owned by Isaac Harris and Max Blank, known as the Shirtwaist Kings for their success in the garment industry. Their factory produced stylish women's blouses, called shirtwaists, which were extremely popular at the time. The fire breaks out at around 4:40 p.m. on March 25, just as workers were preparing to leave for the day. Flames ignited in a bin filled with fabric scraps on the 8th floor. The cause of the fire was never officially determined, but investigators suspected a discarded cigarette or match. Workers tried to put out the fire, but it spread rapidly, fueled by the fabric and wooden tables. Within minutes, the fire leapt to the 9th and 10th floors. A desperate escape. Elevators. Some workers managed to cram into the elevators, but they could only carry a few at a time. Eventually, the elevator operators were forced to stop running due to the intense heat. Fire escape collapse. Many tried to flee down the building's narrow fire escape, but it collapsed under the weight of the escaping workers, sending them plunging to their deaths. The aftermath. The final death toll was 146 workers, 123 women and 23 men. The youngest victim was 14-year-old Kate Leone, and the oldest was 43-year-old Providenza Pano. In the weeks following the fire, mass protests, more than 100,000 people joined a funeral march for the victims, demanding justice. A lasting legacy. More than a century later, the Triangle Shirtwaist fire remains a powerful symbol of the fight for workers' rights. The site of the fire, now part of New York University, is marked with plaques and memorials honoring the victims. Each year, labor activists gather to remember those who lost their lives and to reaffirm the importance of workplace safety and fair labor laws. The Triangle Fire serves as a tragic reminder of what happens when profits are placed above human lives, and how tragedy can ignite change. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.